Welcome to Friday's edition of Renew. I'm Pastor Tony Cowan. Thanks for joining us, and let's get right to the point today. I believe, again, we're going to go out this week with a bang. We are talking about trusting God, trusting in the Lord, and specifically trusting in the Lord with all of our heart. And again, how do we come to that place? We come to the place of trusting in the Lord with all of our heart when we find out what's in the heart of God, the one we're trusting in. Now we're going to go back over to the book of Psalms today, Psalm 34, and I love this psalm here. I don't have time to read the whole thing because of the time constraints here, but I believe you go back and read the whole thing. I just believe it'll be a blessing for you, but this is going to help us in understanding some things. Again, this was written by David. David was mightily used by God. God did some powerful things through him and for him because he trusted in the Lord with all of his heart. And again, it's because he was a man after God's own heart. In other words, God said that. He said, David's a man after my own heart, meaning he wasn't just satisfied with a surface knowledge about God. He wanted to know God. He wanted to know him personally and have a walk with him. And so you see David writing about the goodness of the Lord, about the loving kindness of God, about the mercies of God and all those things. And that's why he was able to trust the Lord with all of his heart. Psalm 34. Verse number 8, it says, "Oh, taste." Now, that word "oh" is not "oh." It is "oh." It means "oh," like a wow factor, okay? So he says, "Oh, taste and see," what? "That the Lord is good." You know, notice that he uses two words there, taste and see. Now, he's not talking about our natural senses, in our natural body. When he says taste here, in the Bible particularly, when it says taste, it means to experience. He says experience, taste and experience that the Lord is good. We can kind of use that as an illustration, though. If you go to the mall somewhere, or maybe, a Sam's Warehouse or something like that, a lot of times they'll have food sampling places listed out. And you go through the food court at the mall, they have people standing out in front of their restaurants, and they've got toothpicks stuck in a sample, and they want you to taste it, to try it. Why? Because they feel if you taste their food, then you're going to develop an appetite for more of their food, and you're going to come buy it. Well, that's the way the Lord is as well. He wants us to taste, to sample, to experience his goodness. Why? Because that's going to give us an appetite for more of his goodness. Because the Lord is absolutely good. There is no evil in him. He's just good. Now, you may have thought there's good things in life that you've experienced, but if you haven't experienced God, you haven't experienced good yet. So he says, "Oh, taste, experience, and see that the Lord is good." And again, this is not a natural seeing he's talking about here. This is an inward seeing in your heart. You can see things in your heart that you don't see with your natural eyesight. Now, in Psalm 27, this is again another Psalm of David. Psalm 27, verse 13, he says, "Oh, I would have lost heart." I would have lost heart. What does he mean by that? In other words, I've faced something in my life. I've got a challenge in my life. I've come against a wall in my life that if I didn't know better, if I didn't know the goodness of the Lord, if I didn't know how to trust God, I would have thrown in the towel. I would have quit. I would have just gotten so despondent and discouraged. I would have just given up and quit and thrown the sponge in and just said, well, that's enough of that. He said, I would have lost heart unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. There's just times in our life when we look outwardly and we don't see any good things. We don't see hope. But inside, we need to be able to see the goodness of the Lord in the middle of that. We need to be able to believe to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. That's what David did. So when he says here, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good," that's what he's talking about. Then it goes on to say, "Blessed is the man who trusts in God," who trusts in him. And again, that just lines up with Jeremiah 17 that we read yesterday. Blessed is that man who trusts in the Lord. He's going to be like that tree planted by the waters, whose roots are down in the living waters. And no matter what happens externally, he's not living from the outside in. He's living from the inside out. And that's what he's talking about right there. He's saying, if we are trusting in the Lord, we're going to be walking in the blessing of God right there. We're going to be walking in something, in a hope that nobody else knows anything about. Then it goes on in verse 9 and says, "Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints. There is no want to those who fear him. And again, that when he says fear, he's not talking about being scared of God, being afraid of God. He's actually talking about honoring God, honoring his word, honoring his faithfulness, trusting in him. So we could read it this way: "Oh, trust the Lord, you his saints, for there is no want to those who trust him." Now, when it says there's no want, that doesn't mean that he wants us to deny our needs and deny our desires and wants. What that word want there actually means is lack. He doesn't want us to lack. We're not going to lack anything when we are trusting in the Lord. It brings that out in verse 10. "The young lions lack and suffer hunger, but those who seek the Lord shall not lack any good thing." We're not going to be lacking any good thing when we're trusting in the Lord. Why? Because we're hooked up with the source. We're hooked up with the source himself, the Most High God, the source of all life. That's why God needs to be in our life, in every area of our life. We need to trust God in every area of our life, for everything in our life. Why? Because that's where we're going to always have hope. We're not going to lose heart. We're not going to be fearful. And we're not going to lack any good thing. That's good news right there. And that's all the time I've got for today and for this week. Join us again next week. If you'd like additional resources and materials, go to tonycowan.org, and we will see you next week.